my book is a bit of a homecoming to the Heartland, where I'm from. And it's my COVID project because I couldn't go to China anymore. And I had been spotting this trend happening in the Heartland for at least a year before I started the research on it. And I did about a year's worth of research and interviews in person through a very lengthy series of road trips, which we'll get to hear about. And then I wrote the book for probably about 9 months. And it went through the whole editing production, and it launches March 7th. So I have a great publisher behind it in Boston. And as you can see here, it's already gotten a very good review from Publishers Weekly, which, yay, everybody, yay, yay, yay. Okay, and it's gotten a lot of good endorsements as well. So Ro Khanna, Congressman Ro Khanna, John Chambers of Cisco, Steve Case of AOL and Revolution, Jim Breyer of Breyer Capital. They've all endorsed the book, and many more as well, but these are kind of the highlights. It's my 4th book, as I said. I'm known as the Silicon Dragon Lady, so I just need to get rid of the Silicon Dragon Lady moniker and become the Silicon Heartland woman. Okay, so 4 books. My Rust Belt Road Tour. This is a little bit of where I went. This is the core of where I went, but there's been a lot of other places outside of this circle, but the circle is around my hometown, Lancaster, Ohio. And it is around my upbringing in southern Ohio. That's my grandparents' farm. It's still there. It's still in the family, and it's great. And I go back there still. But that's a little bit about my own background. You know, I'm from this Heartland family of southeastern Ohio. My father was a PhD history professor. My mother was a kindergarten teacher. I got the travel bug from them and the adventure bug from them. And so my journalistic experience has combined a lot of my interest and my personality of being curious and adventuresome. And that's led to a lot of interesting experiences in my life. But I've never forgotten the homeland, my heartland, Lancaster, Ohio. Lancaster, Ohio was a glass town, glass factory town, home to Anchor Hocking. And it is rather symbolic of a lot of the themes that I talk about in the book of a renaissance and a recovery, of a meltdown, and then a recovery of the American economy. So how many people can guess who this person is in the picture? That's actually my July 4th Lancaster, Ohio parade. Does anybody recognize somebody there? No? Okay, well, believe me, I was very surprised when I saw J.D. Vance in my hometown parade. That's him, J.D. Vance. Our new senator from Ohio. And, you know, we have a little bit of a shared background because we're both from kind of those roots of Kentucky, southern Ohio kind of roots. And anyhow, there's J.D. Vance before he became famous.
You used to be both globalists.
Yeah.
He remained a globalist, but he's no longer.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so Rust Belt. As I said, I was on the doing a lot of research in the Rust Belt and met with a lot of different types of people: entrepreneurs, mayors, town leaders, incubators, accelerators, venture capitalists. But here I am in Lordstown, Ohio, with the founder of a company in Lordstown, Ohio that took over an old GM factory and was going to be making electric pickup trucks. Well, the story has evolved quite a bit since then, that Foxconn took over the factory. This founder is out, but Foxconn is now running it. So there still is this China connection to the Heartland. And then the other photo of me with the fellow where we're elbowing it is the general manager of Folio Glass in Dayton, Ohio. So that's another China connection where the Chinese Fuyao Glass took over a former GM factory again and has revitalized it. So part of this story is about, as I'm sure many of you listened to the State of the Union address the other night, a lot of the themes that Biden talked about are in my book about an optimistic outlook for America as it competes with China. And semiconductor manufacturing is a good part of that story. So the Intel factory in Ohio is 30 miles from my hometown. And I took these pictures of the factory going up right outside of Columbus, Ohio. And as we know, the government is involved with this renaissance, $52.7 billion to go towards semiconductor manufacturing. We need to bring it back to the US. All right, so in my research, I discovered that these cities are all very different. They have tech clusters, so each one of them has a different kind of specialty. And as you can see here, Pittsburgh is AI and robotics. Columbus is insurtech and health tech. Indianapolis is a lot about SaaS. Cleveland is biotech. Detroit is Industry 4.0, mobility, electric vehicles. And in this new CHIPS Act, there's a lot of money going to regional innovation hubs. So my book really illustrates where that money is going to have an impact. And one other interesting aspect that I learned as I got deeper into the research of this is how tied the Midwest is to manufacturing. It's the Rust Belt, right? Steel, coal, it was the leader of the US economy for many, many years before tech came in, and a lot of the money moved to Silicon Valley and the coast. And the Heartland was left out. Money and jobs went to China, went to Mexico. But today we're seeing new tech come in and reinvent manufacturing. So one of the companies that I visited in Youngstown, Ohio, which Youngstown, Ohio was a great steel capital, which fell on very hard times, but now today has discovered 3D printing. That is the upside of this story. So I talk about what the drivers are of this Heartland Renaissance, and tech talent is one of them. I put together this chart to show you where the increases are in tech talent. We can see that it's not just in Silicon Valley, but there's a lot of increases in places that you might not immediately expect. Like Louisville, 31% increase in tech talent. Dayton is where I started my career as a journalist on the morning newspaper. I was talking to this fellow here about Dayton, and these are good numbers here. Any questions so far? Yeah.
Those numbers about the tech talent is the talent pool that's not jobs.
It's the talent, the workers in tech.
Okay. Hired or not hired.
In any kind of tech. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of millennials. A lot of millennials. Okay.
The company earlier, the Fuyao Glass, is that featured in the American factory? Is that the same?
Yeah, that's the same company. Yeah, I got the tour of the factory too. It was really cool in Dayton. It was really cool to see these 3 different cultures all working together.
One of the things that we talk about a lot in Southern California is we have these top globally ranked universities that we educate things like 5,600 engineers every year.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense of some of these universities the top universities certainly
Yeah.
in the region there?
Yeah.
How many engineers they graduate every year, or if that's something that's considered as a factor in the rise of the middle class?
Oh, yeah, it's a huge driver. I mean, you have Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and they're a leader in AI and robotics. So in Pittsburgh, That's one of the reasons you see so much innovation in that area. And same thing happening around Ohio State University in Columbus, graduating a lot of engineers. But I understand that a lot more is needed because that Intel plant is going to have a huge impact in the region. They're going to have to hire a lot more engineers. And so it's going to have a dramatic impact on the whole region. But yeah,
folks from Case Western.
Oh, Case Western, yeah. Case Western out of Cleveland, very strong. Purdue out of Indiana, very strong in semiconductors. Michigan State and Wayne State, very strong on automotive. And automotive is one of those industries that's in total disruption. Mobility.
It's
Not automotive, it's mobility. Yeah, and you know, the other thing that's driving it is not just the universities, but the corporations that are involved. So Ford and GM and Procter & Gamble and Nationwide Insurance and the institutions like Cleveland Clinic out of Cleveland and
UPMC.
what?
UPMC in Pittsburgh.
Okay, that's true. Yeah. See, David knows this stuff because he's worked with me on some other aspects of this book tour.
I grew up in central Pennsylvania. I grew up in Altoona, Pennsylvania, which is not far from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So I've seen some of this development, especially on the Pennsylvania side of things.
Sure. So Columbus used to be known as Cowtown when I grew up, and today it's really nothing like Cowtown. It's a very diversified population, 15% growth in the last decade, and a lot of startup activity around it. So we have seen that some of these factors that are driving these cities to rise up, and I have to say that the pandemic was a real tipping point because people began realizing that they could move, that they could work from anywhere. They didn't have to be in a corporation. They could, move out of Silicon Valley and move to somewhere else for family reasons and for cost of living reasons. So this has really benefited the Midwest as well. Venture capital is moving in. It's about a 4 times growth in the last decade. Some of the firms that are highlighted in my book are Drive Capital out of Columbus, High Alpha out of Indianapolis, Magrat Venture out of Pittsburgh. And the coastal VCs are starting to recognize this trend of the Heartland on the rise. So we're starting to see some money flowing in from New York, California, and Boston. So these are some of the VCs that I met along the way. You can see it's a pretty diverse lot, everywhere from Morgantown, West Virginia, to Indianapolis, to Pittsburgh. So some of this is kind of like a photo show, so I wanted to show you kind of what it's like being out there. This is a Youngstown incubator that's totally focused on advanced manufacturing, and it is having its impact. It's a 5-building cluster. Startups are coming out of this advanced manufacturing lab, and these are some of the entrepreneurs that I met. Also a diverse lot. Everyone from a young lady who left her fashion career in New York City and moved to Flint, Michigan to start a company in recycling. And some have been very successful. The fellow playing the piano there, he sold his company already. And some have not done so well. The fellow on all the way to the left, well, they're in vertical farming, and his venture capitalist has, unfortunately, I've heard, pulled the plug. So, you see these stories in Silicon Valley and in the Heartland where VCs can give up. And I visited.
They can give up in the Bay Area. Yeah.
They can give up in the Bay Area. It's a universal story. It's a universal story, yes, definitely. So one of the factors that's driving the Rust Belt is the minority population. In Tulsa, there's the Black Wall Street, and I visited Tulsa as well. And this is having a major impact on the Tulsa ecosystem and economy. Detroit, I noticed the same thing. Okay, so how many people know of Braddock, Pennsylvania? Okay, Braddock was the home of a lot of steel companies, and it's actually the home of the last standing steel company in the Pittsburgh region. Like, Pittsburgh was all steel, right? It's one steel mill left. And that's it. I visited that, which was fun and enlightening as well. I also visited Flint, Vehicle City. As you can see here, they're still very proud of their heritage, but there is not everybody has come along for the Renaissance. This photo of the kind of rundown house. This is not something that's just a one-time occurrence. This is throughout these major cities in the Heartland: Detroit, Flint, Cleveland, Youngstown. There's a lot of blight. Of course, LA has an awful lot of downsides as well, as I've learned the last couple of days being here. But, okay. So who are the people who are making a difference? Well, I interviewed the mayors, and they're making a difference. There's the mayor of Pittsburgh, the mayor of Dayton, and the mayor of Flint. And they're all quoted in the book, so you can read the book to hear what they have to say. There are community champions like John Chambers, who is very well known in the tech world as the past CEO of Cisco. Now he's giving a lot of money back to West Virginia. There are town champions like in Portsmouth, Ohio. These three here nobody will recognize any of them, but they're making a huge difference in Portsmouth, Ohio, which was the opioid capital of the nation, and they are making a difference. So as I said, or maybe I didn't stress this enough yet, but the culture is really different in the Midwest than from Silicon Valley or New York. Culture is driving this. It's one of the factors that's driving it. It's the whole grit, the whole determination that I also saw in China, that I see in the Midwest now, that I think it's going to carry it through. Well, there's a lot of stories in the book because it's kind of about my personal journey too. But I ended up in Kentucky at the Fannin homestead, going back a couple of generations. And you can read about that in the book because I'm not going to give it away right now. But there's a lot of stories like my car breaking down. Okay, and we have been on this Silicon Heartland tour online, circling all over the Heartland with these Ask a VC shows. The next one is going to be in Indiana. We just did Louisville. Then we're doing Cincinnati, Cleveland. Then we're going to end up March 7th with Rise of the Rest with Steve Case. And there you go. So please join us if you can on the online tour. And then if you are in the Rust Belt, of course, any of these places, I'm going to start the Rust Belt Road Tour toward the end of March, because I'm not going there now with this weather the way it is. Okay, so.
A couple questions for you, Rebecca.
Yeah, all right.